They say that this Dux is a delightful spot, says Casanova, in one of the most personal of his notes, and I see that it might be for many, but not for me. For what delights me in my old age is independent of the place which I inhabit. When I do not sleep, I dream, and when I am tired of dreaming, I blacken paper. Then I read, and most often reject all that my pen has vomited. Here we see him blackening paper, on every occasion and for every purpose. In one bundle I found an unfinished story about Roland, and some adventure with women in a cave. Then a meditation on arising from sleep, 19th of May, 1789. Then a short reflection of a philosopher who finds himself thinking of procuring his own death. At Dux, on getting out of bed, on 13th October 1793, day dedicated to St. Lucy, memorable in my too long life. A big budget, containing cryptograms, is headed Grammatical Lottery, and there is the title page of a treatise on the duplication of the hexahedron, demonstrated geometrically to all the universities and all the academies of Europe. See Charles Henry, Les Connaissances Mathématiques de Casanova, Rome, 1883. There are innumerable verses, French and Italian, in all stages, occasionally attaining the finality of these lines, which appear in half a dozen tentative forms. Sans mystère point de plaisir, sans silence point de mystère, charme divin de mes loisirs, solitude que tu m'es chère. Then there are a number of more or less complete manuscripts of some extent. There is the manuscript of the translation of Homer's Iliad in ottava rima, published in Venice 1775-8, of the Histoire de Venise, of the Icosameron, a curious book published in 1787, purporting to be translated from the English, but really an original work of Casanova. Philokalie sur les sottises des mortels, a long manuscript never published. The sketch and beginning of Le Polmarque, ou la calomnie démasquée par la présence d'esprit, tragicomédie en 3 actes, composée à Dux dans le mois de juin de l'année 1791, which recurs again under the form of the Polémoscope, la lorgnette menteuse, ou la calomnie démasquée, acted before the Princesse de Ligne, at her chateau at Töplitz, 1791. There is a treatise in Italian, Delle Passioni. There are long dialogues, such as Le philosophe et le théologien, and Rêve, Dieu moi. There is the Songe d'un quart d'heure, divided into minutes. There is the very lengthy criticism of Bernardin de Saint-Pierre. There is the Confutation d'une censure indiscrète qu'on lit dans la Gazette de Iéna, 19 juin 1789, with another large manuscript, unfortunately imperfect, first called L'Insulte, and then Placé au Public, dated Dux, this 2nd of March 1790, referring to the same criticism on the Icosameron and the Fuite des prisons, l'histoire de ma fuite des prisons de la République de Venise, qu'on appelle les plombes, which is the first draft of the most famous part of the Memoirs, and was published at Leipzig in 1788, and, having read it in the Marcian Library at Venice, I am not surprised to learn from this indignant document that it was printed under the care of a young Swiss who had the talent to commit 100 faults of orthography. Section 3. We now come to the documents directly relating to the Memoirs, and among these are several attempts at a preface, in which we see the actual preface coming gradually into form. One is entitled Casanova au lecteur, another Histoire de mon existence, and a third Preface. There is also a brief and characteristic Précis de ma vie, dated November the 17th, 1797. Some of these have been printed in Le Livre, 1887. But by far the most important manuscript that I discovered, one which, apparently, I am the first to discover, is a manuscript entitled Extrait du chapitre 4 et 5. It is written on paper similar to that on which the Memoirs are written. The pages are numbered 104 to 148, and though it is described as extrait, it seems to contain, at all events, the greater part of the missing chapters to which I have already referred, chapters 4 and 5 of the last volume of the Memoirs. In this manuscript we find Armeline and Scholastica, whose story is interrupted by the abrupt ending of chapter 3. We find Mariuccia of volume 7, chapter 9, who married a hairdresser, and we find also Jacqueline, whom Casanova recognizes as his daughter, much prettier than Sophia, the daughter of Thérèse Pompiati, whom I had left at London. It is curious that this very important manuscript, which supplies the one missing link in the Memoirs, should never have been discovered by any of the very few people who have had the opportunity of looking over the Dux manuscripts. I am inclined to explain it by the fact that the case in which I found this manuscript contains some papers not relating to Casanova. Probably those who looked into this case looked no further. I have told Herr Brockhaus of my discovery, and I hope to see chapters 4 and 5 in their places when the long-looked-for edition of the complete text is at length given to the world. Another manuscript which I found tells with great piquancy the whole story of the Abbé de Brosses's ointment, the curing of the Princess de Conti's pimples, and the birth of the Duc de Montpensier, which is told very briefly, and with much less point, in the Memoirs, Volume 3, page 327. Readers of the Memoirs will remember the duel at Warsaw with Count Branicki in 1766, Volume 10, pages 274 to 320, an affair which attracted a good deal of attention at the time, and of which there is an account in a letter from the Abbé Taruffi to the dramatist Francesco Albergati, dated Warsaw, March the 19th, 1766, quoted in Ernesto Masi's Life of Albergati, Bologna, 1878. A manuscript at Dux in Casanova's handwriting gives an account of this duel in the third person. It is entitled Description de l'affaire arrivée à Varsovie le 5 mars 1766. D'Ancona, in the Nuova Antologia, volume 67, page 412, referring to the Abbé Taruffi's account, mentions what he considers to be a slight discrepancy, that Taruffi refers to the danseuse about whom the duel was fought as la Casacci, while Casanova refers to as la Catai. In this manuscript, Casanova always refers to her as la Casacci. La Catai is evidently one of Monsieur Laforgue's arbitrary alterations of the text. In turning over another manuscript, I was caught by the name Charpillon, which every reader of the Memoirs will remember as the name of the harpy by whom Casanova suffered so much in London in 1763-4. This manuscript begins by saying, "I have been in London for 6 months, and have been to see them," that is, the mother and daughter, "in their own house," where he finds nothing but swindlers who cause all who go there to lose their money in gambling. This manuscript adds some details to the story told in the 9th and 10th volumes of the Memoirs, and refers to the meeting with the Charpillons 4.5 years before, described in volume 5, pages 428 to 485. It is written in a tone of great indignation. Elsewhere I found a letter written by Casanova, but not signed, referring to an anonymous letter which he had received in reference to the Charpillons, and ending, "My handwriting is known." It was not until the last that I came upon great bundles of letters addressed to Casanova, and so carefully preserved that little scraps of paper, on which postscripts are written, are still in their places. One sees the seals on the backs of many of the letters, on paper which has slightly yellowed with age, leaving the ink, however, almost always fresh. They come from Venice, Paris, Rome, Prague, Bayreuth,